On the first day of their honeymoon, Nikita's smile faded the moment she answered a phone call. She quickly locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and knelt beside the sink. Her hands, steady and practiced, reached beneath the cabinet where pieces of a sniper rifle had been hidden. It wasn't a surprise. The travel tickets given by her superiors weren't a gift of love. They were a cover. This wasn't a honeymoon. It was a mission. Her husband, Marco, was completely unaware. He believed he'd married a quiet, beautiful nurse. Nikita had never corrected him. As she assembled the rifle with smooth, mechanical movements, Marco stood on the balcony, lost in memories. He remembered their first meeting, how unreal it had felt that a woman like her would choose someone like him. It still felt like a dream. While he smiled, Nikita locked the scope in place and opened the window, her earpiece buzzing with her handler's voice. The target's coordinates were coming through. Just as she lifted the rifle, Marco knocked gently on the door, expressing his love through soft words. Nikita's heart clenched, but she turned back to her mission. There was no time for emotion. This was the life she never asked for. The film Lam Nikita began long before this moment, back when she was just a wild girl on the streets. She hung out with the wrong crowd. One day, they robbed a pharmacy. When the police arrived, a shootout erupted. Her male accomplices killed the store owner and 2 officers before they were gunned down. Nikita, hiding in the corner with headphones on, didn't flinch. When a surviving officer approached, she casually stood and shot him point blank. At the station, she refused to cooperate. The police chief lost patience and struck her. She responded by stabbing his hand with a pencil. In court, she was framed for all the murders, sentenced to death and stripped of her citizenship. Her courtroom outburst was fierce. It took multiple officers to restrain her. On the day of her execution, Nikita cried. She asked for her mother, but it was too late. They injected her. When she awoke, she wasn't in hell. She was in a white room, greeted by a man named Bob. He explained everything. Nikita's death had been faked. The government had seen her potential and selected her for a secret program. She could be reborn, but only if she agreed to rigorous training. Otherwise, she'd go back to the grave. Disoriented and numb, Nikita asked to sleep. Bob let her. Within days, she proved why she had been chosen. During a transport, she overpowered her guards and even took one hostage. When Bob approached, she turned the gun on him. He shot her in the thigh to subdue her. Days later, he returned and asked her to join the program voluntarily. With few options, she agreed. The training was brutal. She learned computers, surveillance, languages, and weaponry. During a taekwondo session, she punched her instructor before he could speak. When the time came to teach her elegance, her resistance was obvious. The female mentor told her to smile more. Nikita forced a grin that looked more like a snarl. She didn't fit in, and her progress was slow. The leadership considered her a failure. Bob asked for 2 more weeks. He tried a different approach. He placed a graffiti poster Nikita liked in her room. He brought her a birthday cake, the first she'd ever received. Slowly, her guard dropped. When he gave her a second chance, she returned to training. She even tried makeup and computer practice. Just before her deadline, Bob invited her to dinner. It seemed like a gift, but inside the box he gave her was a pistol, loaded with titanium bullets. This dinner was an assassination mission. Nikita accepted it without flinching. She completed the mission with 3 precise shots, then followed the escape plan, only to find a wall blocking the road. Pursued by enemies, she fought her way into the kitchen, held her ground in a gunfight, and finally escaped through a garbage chute into the rain. When she returned, Bob was smiling. This had been her final test. She slapped him. He didn't react. Instead, he embraced her and said she was free. She was given a new identity, a bank account, and a nursing license. She moved into a small house and started a quiet life. At the supermarket, she met Marco, a cashier with big dreams and a soft heart. He chased her gently. They began dating. In 6 months, they were living together. Nikita, who didn't know how to cook, tried to make sweet breakfasts. Marco dreamed of building a boat. They smiled often, but he wondered, why did no one ever come looking for her? Why did she have no friends? Then the call came. Her first mission since graduation. She was to observe a target at a hotel. Disguised as a waiter, she delivered food. The guards tipped her. No violence, it was simple. She returned home, almost happy. Marco saw her glowing. He had no idea. The next day, Bob came. Marco was thrilled to meet someone from her family. Bob played along, claiming to be a travel agent. To celebrate their engagement, he gave them tickets to Venice. The plan was already in motion. In Venice, they spent a beautiful day together. Photos, wine, laughter. But when night fell, the phone rang. Nikita smiled and lied. "The restaurant is out of chicken legs," she said. Then she excused herself to take a shower. In the bathroom, she assembled the rifle. This time she cried. She took the shot and packed the weapon away. Marco, worried by the silence, came to check on her. She told him everything was fine, but inside she was breaking. She had hoped for peace, but Bob had only brought her to carry out another kill. She felt like a tool, nothing more. Her next mission was to target an ambassador, but this one was different. She was told to gain intel without killing. For 6 months, she tracked him. She identified a woman who frequented his gallery. The plan was to use her. On the mission day, Nikita delivered a carefully wrapped gift to the ambassador's residence, playing her role with practiced poise. Inside was a decoy item, just convincing enough to distract him. As he opened it with curiosity, Nikita slipped into the kitchen, her face blank, but her mind racing. She removed a vial from a hidden compartment in her sleeve and poured its contents into a bottle of whiskey, swirling it gently. Moments later, she returned and offered him a drink. Within minutes, his eyes fluttered and his body collapsed into unconsciousness. Her colleague, who had been waiting in the shadows, began to change into the ambassador's clothing. The plan was precise. He would head to the embassy under disguise and extract confidential documents. But just as he was leaving, Nikita's earpiece crackled. Bob's voice came through, cold and sharp. "Change of plans. Victor is en route." Victor arrived like a storm. Without warning, he burst through the door carrying 2 bloodied bodies, agents who had been part of a failed operation. He barked orders, demanding that the ambassador's body be moved to the bathroom. Nikita's pulse quickened. This wasn't protocol. When the ambassador began to stir unexpectedly, Victor panicked and fired. The shot was meant to silence, but it missed and hit their own man. Enraged, Victor turned and executed the wounded agent without hesitation. Nikita reached for her communicator, but Victor seized it violently and pressed a blade to her throat. His eyes were wild, his breathing erratic. There was no room for negotiation. Forced into action, Nikita disguised herself as the ambassador, adjusting her gait and posture to mimic him perfectly. She slipped into the embassy amidst heavy surveillance. The safe was hidden behind a painting in the office, and with steady fingers, she entered the code. Inside were stacks of classified documents. One by one, she photographed each page using a tiny camera embedded in her glasses. Meanwhile, outside, Victor's behavior drew suspicion. The guards exchanged looks as he muttered to himself and fiddled nervously with his weapon. As they neared the car to question him, Victor raised his hand in a sharp signal and opened fire. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared, bodies dropped. Nikita, hearing the gunfire, bolted from the office, tore off the disguise, and escaped through a side entrance. Victor followed closely, cutting through guards like a madman. His bloodlust was uncontrollable. After stealing a vehicle, he drove with Nikita beside him, both of them silent as sirens screamed in the distance. Victor's shoulder was bleeding, but he didn't care. They drove for several kilometers before he pulled over. Without a word, he drew his pistol, pressed it to his own temple, and ended his life. The silence that followed was deafening. That night, Marco sat across from Nikita in their dimly lit kitchen. His face was pale, his hands clenched. "I know everything," he said softly. He had traced hospital records, searched public databases, and uncovered the trail she thought was erased. She wasn't a nurse. She wasn't even legally alive. But none of that matters. Being with you is everything. Let's just go. We can leave this behind, start over. Nikita's eyes welled with tears, but she shook her head. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't understand. I've done things I can't undo, and they'll never stop chasing me. I'd only put you in danger." She reached out and kissed him, slow and gentle, then stood, gathered her coat, and walked out the door before dawn broke. Later that morning, Bob knocked at the door. Marco answered with quiet resolve. He didn't ask questions. He didn't show fear. Instead, he handed over a sealed envelope containing the film negatives Nikita had left behind. Bob accepted it with a heavy nod. He didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Years ago, he had pulled Nikita from the brink, but in the end, it was Marco who gave her the chance to choose freedom.